Retailers delaying payment to suppliers past the stipulated 90 days are under intense scrutiny from the Competition Authority of Kenya, seeking to reduce buyer power abuse cases. The process, which came into the limelight 3 months ago, has seen 4 out of 25 retailers flagged for delayed payments to suppliers. Betty Kiptum is our reporter. She sought to find out from the Retail Traders Association of Kenya CEO Wambui Mbarire issues bedeviling the sector and how they are addressing them.
In 2019, the Oxford Business Group rated Kenya's retail sector as the second best performing in Africa, second to South Africa, and just tying there with Nigeria. We want to find out how the sector is performing currently, especially with the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, and how the future looks like. To give us this insight is Wambui Mbarire. She is the Chief Executive Officer at the Retail Trade Association of Kenya. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you, Betty. I think I'll pick it off from your point of Oxford in 2019 said we are second. So yes, we are second to South Africa. We have we say that we range between 27 and 30% being formal retail. We have a very large informal retail sector in this country. Now, the formal bit of retail is, for most Kenyans, retail means supermarkets, but really, retail covers furniture, fashion, eateries are part of that, guys who do books, apparels, so all that falls under the retail sector, and it's part of what forms the membership of the association. We look to grow the sector beyond the 30% that has been, I think in the last 10, 20 years, we've stuck between 27 and 30% of the formal retail. We look to grow that as the country develops and people start looking for the convenience and incomes grow to allow you to shop in greater bulk. The reason our informal sector is so large is because the average Kenyan income is limited to to sharing the money you earn from your housing, your accommodation, education for your children. So you look to shop where you can break bulk, and the place you can break bulk is normally in the informal sector. So because of limited incomes, that sector continues to grow, and it gives us pretty much stiff competition. The other advantage of the informal sector is that it gives credit, which supermarkets will give. So that sector continues to grow. And as we develop, I think even that informal starts turning into formal in their own way.
The sector gives very limited margins, yeah? And over the past, say, few years, the struggle of the economy, or rather a tough business environment, has affected this sector quite a bit. Could you just give us an insight into that?
So you must aim to sell more to be able to make a return. If you're dealing with volumes, it means then you really must be on top of your cash flows. And the cash flow has been what has been an issue within the sector. Managing the cash flows within the 30 days or 60 days or 90 days that you and your supplier have agreed as payment terms, that is where the challenge would be. Yes, so we should, most retailers look to sell the volumes, and as you sell the volumes, then the small margins will add up to your overheads. Again, the overheads are way higher than what the margins accommodate. So you need to do a lot of checks and balances to ensure that you're able to manage that money you're making, A, to pay your suppliers, and most importantly, to pay your suppliers on time, and B, to continue having stocks on your shelves. And then, of course, being able to manage your overheads, be it electricity, be it your staff costs, be it any promotions you're doing internally, be it a new branch you're opening. So that cash flow management is very key for the survival of any retailer.
The survival, of course, has been tested for quite a number of these retailers, from the late payments that are being made, or just that backlog of debt, for suppliers. How are the retailers handling this?
If I take you back to about 2 years ago, when we were undergoing the Nakuma challenges, government came in, and we as sector, and when I say sector, I refer to the retailer themselves and their suppliers, sat down and started working out supply agreements that we can jointly sign off on to ensure that we agree on terms of payment, failure to which we're still in the same regulations and which are still in draft form, put in a code of ethics, put in terms and conditions of if you do not, what then? In 2019, towards the end of the year and at the beginning of this year, some of the draft elements from the regulations were taken and confirmed in the CAK Act. Those elements give CAK the power to take action should any party default. Should it be the supplier abusing its position? Should it be the retailer abusing its position? And as you've seen in the newspapers, CAK has been on top of this issue in terms of ensuring that the retailers are sticking to the terms of payment. And it also gives the retailer an opportunity to explain any discrepancies that might arise that then lead to the delay in payments.
And when you mentioned that competition authority report, there was a recently released press release, the 25 that were requested for their debt portfolios, the 4 that showed that they had a bit of an issue of debt repayment, and also Tuskys was flagged, yeah? What is going on? Because some people are thinking that it could go down the Nakumatt way. What is going on?
25 were tested. And 25 out of 25, only 4 were flagged, meaning the retail sector is not dying. The retail sector is not suffering. We have members who are having challenges and they're working towards growing out of that. So out of the 25, 4 were picked out. 4 are working, as is Tuskys with the CAK, to redeem the situation. So it allows us to look inwards and see where our challenges, what is leading to this constant, shall I say, backlash in the media that shows that we are not paying. The other thing we always say as a sector is that a lot of people don't understand how retail works. I think we focus on the fact that every Kenyan who shops, on average, pays cash. So the question is always, so if we are paying all this cash, how come you as a retailer are then not able to honor your bills? And I'll go back to the question of the statement that you did on margins. So the margins are very low. We need cash and balances, yeah? You need the check and balances to ensure that by the time the milk vendor comes back for his money, you've sold enough bread to pay the milk. So cash flow. It goes back to the cash flow. Yes, everyone pays cash, but because it's a margin thing and the margins are very low, the cash flow becomes a challenge if we are not on top of it. And some of the challenges are, in this country, we do not have a curriculum for retail. So people running retail are people with general skills that can work in retail. A lot of our retail is, again, family-owned. And family-owned means it started as very well a kiosk. And as a kiosk, your structures were basic. If you don't build on those structures as you grow, there's definitely going to be a challenge. And that has affected a lot of our retailers. Again, being family-owned and not having proper structures can lead to elements of corporate governance. Corporate governance, as cited often in the media again, has to do with, if I give a retail as an example, are we also suppliers? Do we own and we're suppliers at the same time? Because then that conflict of interest can create a challenge. Again, back to the systems, how are we managing our inventory? And inventory relates a lot to now the pilferage. If you do not have a system that works from back end to front end, from receiving till the cash, till the till, you will have holes through which that particular product can fall through.
The pilferage issue is quite a big issue in the sector, and the estimates are that it costs 2.5% of total revenue, which is quite large. Yeah?
Which is quite large. Retail across the world suffers pilferage. The thing to do is manage how much that is. I think there's an acceptable percentage of 1%. So when we are 2.5, we're really way above. So coupled with the inefficiencies that we have, if you have 2.5% pilferage, really you're going to be sooner or later having a cash flow problem, and managing to have stock on your shelf will become an issue. The pilferage, in our case, a lot of it has to do with we have consumer collusion. meaning at the till, I know you, we can pass through items without running everything. That happens. We have collusion between the supplier and the receiver. So at the receiving end, if the invoice says I got 10 crates of soda, did I actually get 10 crates or did I get 2? But the invoice is received. So there are shortfalls on both sides. It's sometimes retail led by that employee, or it can be supplier led by the supplier employee as well. Right. So all those challenges create a lot of inefficiencies within our retail that can then lead to this very cash flow issues that we see.
Right. For these retail chains, most of them it's by expansion that they increase their revenue. Is there something like responsible expansion or sustainable expansion?
I think we've learned a lesson. So anyone you see opening now has a thought to that plan. And I know what comes a lot is that in the recent past and to an earlier conversation, Naivas and Quickmart are opening branches very often. You will know that in both their cases, and that was also captured in the media, they have new investors in, and those investors demand corporate governance, demand thoughts and planning, strategy in any branch that is opening.
The sector was having a few challenges, of course, as I mentioned, because of the tough economic times we were going through already, and then the COVID-19 hit. Yeah. How has this affected the retail sector?
The non-essential retail has really suffered. You won't even yourself, Betty, go and buy a dress now, or buy new shoes, or buy a TV, unless really it is a total emergency. But you will definitely buy food. So the supermarkets have survived. They are in the food sector. I will tell you, right before the restrictions, because of panic buying, there was an upsurge in sales. Yeah. But when people do bulk buying, it usually means they won't shop for the next 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. So again, because of that, it slowed down at the beginning of the restriction. Mm-hmm. Then as we went into the restriction period, it kind of stabilizes. People buy less in terms of quantity, but food moves. Non-food factors within the supermarkets will not move. So the supermarkets have managed to stay afloat. The supermarkets that really suffered were those that have branches within the CBD, especially in Nairobi, because when the curfew was at 7 and public transport is not an essential service, no one was looking to leave the office at 4 and go shopping. You're looking to leave at 4 and get out of town as soon as you can. So maybe the informal sector then grew within that period because you're all shopping from within your neighborhood. Then now with the curfew moving to 9. With the curfew moving to 9, and even if you leave the office at 5, you have X number of hours until 9 o'clock. So you can afford to enter into a supermarket, pick a few items, and still go. So again, with the extension of the curfew to 9 p.m., that has worked again for the supermarket sector. The non-essential sector continues to suffer.
Online retail has definitely picked up quite a bit during this time of the coronavirus pandemic. For most brick and mortar chains, they were mainly dependent on that. How has it changed now?
One, a lot of formal brick and mortar retailers actually got online platforms with COVID, even those who didn't have. Those who had saw an explosion in that sector. Supermarkets, most of them have always had, especially the big players, have always had an element of online presence. But consumers didn't really utilize that option. I know of a supermarket that moved from 0 to 3,000 orders in a day when the COVID came. When you realize actually flour is flour, so really, I don't have to go to the supermarket to pick it myself. I could actually order it online. The thing that also works for brick and mortar in our country is that our infrastructure does not really facilitate online, especially the deliveries. I say online, when people say online has really picked up, they're talking about a Nairobi problem. It is really a Nairobi problem. If I'm sitting in even Kikuyu, let's say, even Kikuyu town or Kiambu town, it's still a growing concept. It's not that now we really have online shopping going on here, you know. So because of our infrastructure, we don't have an efficient address system. Otherwise, you always will have to tell the Jumia guy, I live on the next stand next to the Safaricom kiosk right opposite the Coke kiosk. They see the church. I mean, so the infrastructure has not, especially outside Nairobi, and even in Nairobi, it's still, I mean, there's still challenges to actually getting efficient delivery.
So you think the brick and mortar players are adjusting?
Oh, they will, yes. There will be that consumer who wants to shop online. So, and that adjustment has happened largely over the COVID period. So I guess that will continue to be developed as we go forward. So that will remain. Question is what will move online and what will remain in brick and mortar.
Quite an array of things will actually remain in brick and mortar, as you said. As we come to a close of this interview, we have established that, well, the sector is not crumbling. There is quite some positive stories from it, and the ones who are struggling are doing something about it. So what is the future of the sector now?
We intend to grow. The potential of the retail sector in this country is seen by the number of foreign players who want to come into our sector. That is an indicator that the future for this particular sector is very bright. The thing that we are working as a sector and with government is to create a curriculum, because we need to, one, create career progression for people playing in the sector so that they stay in the sector and build it. It doesn't become a stopgap measure as you look for a job, I am doing this thing. It becomes actually the job. The other thing is, and I know I repeat this in very many forums, Vision 2030 saw retail and wholesale as very important, to where out of 6 economic pillars, that was one of the economic pillars. Retail allows for self-employment. So if we can formalize the sector, if we can put in a system that creates that curriculum so that when I go to school I can study the basics of retail, when I come out and start a business, I see it as a business, or I see it as a job that I can grow into, that I can set up my own retail and in the process create employment. Somebody did a research, I think Aga Khan University sometime last month. Out of that unemployed group, 72% of people leaving school, 72% of that group actually go into retail. But they're going into retail as a stopgap measure. Imagine if they went to retail like a serious process, the amount of wealth creation we would be churning out of that sector, employment opportunities, and our retail would explode to where we catch up with South Africa or perhaps even surpass their levels.
Thank you very much, Wambui, for giving us those important insights.
Thank you very much, Betty, for having me. I always appreciate an opportunity to speak about retail because I think it plays a very big role in this country towards contributing to the gross domestic product. Thank you very much.
Very important. Asante sana. Well, that was CEO in charge of Retail Trade Association of Kenya, that is Wambui Mbarire, and she has been giving us insights about how the retail sector is performing, the challenges it is facing, and giving us the message that the sector is strong and that there is hope in the future of the sector. Thank you for watching. Continue watching Business Insights. My name is Betty Kiptum. Do have yourself a good night. Bye-bye.